rhetorically, more spasmodically, and always has plenty of air in the lungs. And I've been practicing this week, paying attention specifically to the time breathing, and I've been doing it all wrong lately. Like taking, because like sometimes I'm taking such fast air that I'm thinking like, oh, I need to take this air so that I can be ready, but it really does make a difference.
Totally.
And I like realize that you don't need as much air in order to foam.
Yeah, you really don't need a lot of air to foamate. Like you will probably like feel like you need more oxygen before you actually need more air.
Yeah.
You know, you're gonna feel like you're suffocating because you don't have any oxygen left in. So it's right. And like your voice is really horribly inefficient in making sound compared to how much air goes through. I think I mentioned this, it's like 5% efficient, which is like terrible. It's like really, really bad. I think it's either 5 or 1%, it's something really low like that. Anyway, so yeah, I think that's really true. And I think what he's talking about, a lot of it, like getting your diaphragm to be engaged in it, because when you breathe so quickly, you tend to just do it so high, right? You're like, it's just because it's like with everything you can, and so it just there's only this much. And so if you use your diaphragm in all your lungs, you can fill them up a little bit easier. I thought that was interesting. What else did we talk about? It was short, so there's not a lot.
I just remember, and I can't even give you specifics of I'm pulling it up right now, but when I first read Vocal Wisdom, I just remember thinking, wait, there's not a line in there that is without, I think, pretty significant meaning. And I just think that I think it's the best way to teach the kind of singing that like we're all after, is with those maxims or like pseudo maxims and that kind of imagery like that.
Yeah, I think that's true. And the really like understanding what's happening beneath the surface of it, you know? Because you guys are here like getting your master's degree. We're gonna do something in a second talking about people who are not getting their master's degree. And so you have like a really good idea of what your voice is doing, what you're trying to accomplish, and you've got like a sonic sound in your ear.
Or so
What was that?
I said, or someone would believe. I totally agree.
Yeah, I think you have a better idea than somebody trying to sing along to the radio in their car, right? So, something like that. He also said, I really like this one. All breathing, the singer finally feels that he creates the energy to sing inside his body as he does in speaking, all breathing being reactions to words and melody and emotional content.
Yes, I love that sentence.
Which is like connecting your like technique of breathing to what the poetry is in the music. Which, you know, I don't know, I've heard a lot of teachers talk about breathing in the way that you're going to sing, so that's kind of what it's talking about. Yeah?
Yep.
Sweet. Alright, let's talk about the other article then. Richard Miller.
Oh god.
Oh god, okay, Michael here has a strong reaction.
Yeah. I read his book on low voices a couple of years ago. Around the same time I read Lamperti and the Stephen Smith's book. And also Four Voices. Are we going to talk about Four Voices of Man? Oh, okay.
This is the last pedagogy stuff.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Richard Miller is just. Who gives a shit what, if I may speak frankly, who gives a shit what Richard Miller says? Because how many Met winners or like serious singers has Richard Miller ever produced?
But
Is the measure of a successful teacher how many Met winners they have?
I would say the measure of a successful teacher is how the amount of progress that your students make from, the amount of progress that your students make, and also the level of singing that they're at.
So, but suppose Richard Miller taught at, or suppose someone who's currently very successful with Met winners moved to a full professorship position at the University of Southern North Dakota. And all of their students came in and were just really shitty, but they came out not Met winners, but pretty good.
Well, I would say that they're probably a very successful teacher.
Okay.
Because you've taken a student from like having some kind of like obviously some kind of ability to like match pitch or some innate musicality, and then like made something of this instrument.
right.
What percentage?
can't-
Oh, sorry.
So we can't judge somebody's success by how many Met winners they have.
No.
Okay. So Richard Miller is very responsible for putting some of this like physiology stuff into pedagogical context. And so this article was written in 1987, so it's as old as I am. I'm a little older than this article, but that was a while ago. You know, that's like almost 30 years. And so a lot of these principles have really worked their way into a lot of like what we all think about and how we do singing, and how it works, right? What we understand about it. So I think what he did was really important. He ended up writing a lot of books, and some of it gets a little bit extraneous, but a lot of it is really cool. Like this article is really great, actually. So, no. The Taming Terrible Triplets, the vocal track. Right? Okay. Yeah, dude.
No, I'm fine. Oh.
I have a thing about it.
You have a thing, alright.
Like a thought.
Awesome.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Is that a good time? Okay, at the end, I think you underlined it or someone underlined it.
Yeah, I underlined it.
But where it says like schools of singing that refuse to look at physiology and acoustics of singing, of the singing voice often invent blah blah blah. It basically like if you don't incorporate some use of physiology into like your knowledge of singing, that's bad news. You're probably gonna produce an unnatural sound.
Because you have to come up with a more complicated reason
Yeah.
that's just as complicated.
Yeah, I understand that, but I was also just thinking, because didn't the way like the Italians, they used to teach their singing, they like, from what I understand of their technique, they did, or how they taught singing, it didn't really have to do with physiology at all.
Well, no, but they didn't know about it.
Yeah.
So doesn't that disprove Richard Miller's argument that
Yeah.
physiology necessarily produces, or understanding necessarily produces better pedagogy?
He's not saying that exactly.
Hmm.
He's saying that teachers who dismiss the understanding of acoustics and physiology often come up with more complicated ideas to explain what's going on, rather than like acknowledging that this stuff exists.
They're just replacing that with more complicated taxonomy.
Right,
Okay.
like feeling the unicorn horn, breathing through your feet, so, you know, things like this.
And achieving the same thing.
Right, yeah, so like the end product is singing notes in tune, in rhythm, with artistic intent and everything. Like, we don't talk about that, right? Like, that's something that we learn elsewhere. We're just talking about like how it actually happens. So that's what he meant by that. He's not talking about replacing that kind of thing, and there are a lot of teachers that really have great understanding of how singing works, but they don't talk about a lot of physiology, which is totally fine. But they like innately understand how like acoustics and physiology works because that's exactly what we're working with. You know what I mean? Sure. And so we take this class just to help us understand the other parts of it.
Thank you.
Yeah, oh yeah, no problem. So he had 5 different tongue positions, right? The one where he's, do you guys remember these?
When you place it too low.
Yep.
And the tip is up. And,
Yeah. So there's too low, like putting it at your front teeth but putting it way down. But not behind your teeth. And then there's the one of curling it back.
Singing out.
Yep. And then there's the one of sucking it back so far to push down your larynx so that you have dark sound like using your tongue to do that. And then the one where you stick it way up in your molars.
That makes one throw up.
Well, something.
Gag reflex.
And then you talked about leaving it way too high up and then too low, too curved. Because some people, a lot of these things are reactions to things that other people have written. So there's a lot of teachers talking about having the groove in your tongue, staying consistent. Have you guys ever heard that?
Staying consistent between vowels, I've never heard that.
The groove being like the middle, like
Yeah.
the dip. You never heard that?
I don't know if I've heard it, but not that it stays consistent between all vowels.
Right, well, some people would say that it's like really important to acoustics understanding. So he's just talking about what it ends up doing sometimes. Yeah.
How sophisticated is voice science's knowledge nowadays to what specifically needs to happen to the shape and arc of the tongue? We all understand generally that a high arched tongue that is out of the way of the throat is going to be the best vocal tract shaping. But is there any more specific, like, can vocal acoustics say, oh yeah, that groove in the tongue produces a better acoustical output or whatever?
Yeah, they can model it in computers.
Okay.
So they've done some stuff like that. And they find that mostly, so it's all about where your formants are, right? So, and where those formants are due to where the other formants go.
So what does a divoted tongue, because it doesn't change the length of the tube.
No, it would change how big the tube is. Because remember that the refraction, when the waves do the phase shift,
Okay.
when they go to the open side of the tube, that depends upon how big the opening is. So if I'm going through a tube this size into a room this big, the phase shift is different from one that's like that big. Okay. And so we have like 6, 5, 7 formants because there's that many different tube lengths in our throat. Okay? Is this all making sense still? Okay. So the groove in the tongue thing really would just affect how big that part of the tube is. Mostly.
Like boom whackers.
Yeah, kind of boom whackers. But it would also do, so having that groove in the tongue would affect other parts of the larynx, right? So if I'm having a groove in my tongue and I'm putting tension on my hyoid bone because of that and raising my larynx, I would be changing the formants to it. Does that make sense?
Okay.
So everything is like super integrated. And the whole, yeah, Cody.
Well, and it's true too that a lot of what we're learning, especially like in terms of technique, isn't just for sound, right? It's for longevity. So, like a lot of us, because we're good singers, can make sounds that are beautiful, even if they're sounds that we can't sustain. So,
Yeah.
I think that's what a lot of the posturing has to do with too.
Yeah, and I think finding like the ultimate sound quality. Do you know what I mean? You're always like shaving off like 0.1% to try to get down to it. I mean, like when you come here, you're probably like at like 90% to get to like 100% optimum. I mean, that's super abstract, right? But you're just like trying to get down and like, oh, like if I have my larynx just, I'm tensing like this up a little bit too much and I gotta fix, it's kind of that kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And so this whole article is basically about that chart I showed you about how the way that the different muscles interact with everything, and how like if you do the mylohyoid, like opens your jaw and then raises your larynx, all of a sudden it messes everything up. Because they're so important. And the tongue is so big inside of there that it really leads where everything else goes. Yeah? Was it helpful? Okay. Was there anything else you want to talk about? Or you want to talk about hearing? Oh, I really like, he talked about why the sound is really important. It's on page 230, if you all have it. He says this is the acoustic at-rest position, talking about having the tongue forward. Readily located by saying or by pronouncing the neutral vowel schwa as in said when one is thinking like tends to be where our tongue is most speak-like and resonant.
Interesting.
Do we put our tongue in the proper position before this, or are we just saying like with a neutral tongue position?
Because we leave it there.
I've heard and I've also heard tracking E.
Okay, so this is two different things. This
Right.
is why I want to talk about this actually.
Okay.
Well,
So,
but don't they kind of go for the same goal though of a higher vowel?
Well, it
maybe.
doesn't strike me as a terribly high vowel.
Uh,
Yeah, it's higher than but it's
Yeah.
lower.
So what would the do if we're talking about keeping our natural laryngeal position? It's probably going to keep it lower.
It'll then versus like
Or if I was
right?
thinking, all of a
Yeah.
sudden I'm going to have a singing posture and go,
Oh, it's
My larynx is
addressing
probably-
larynx height as opposed to tongue.
probably.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I got that. It was very relaxed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
And so a lot-
that's the at-rest he's talking about, is laryngeal at-rest, not necessarily tongue.
Right.
Got it.
But the tongue has a big effect on it, right?
Yeah.
The tongue is like totally connected to where your hyoid bone is. Does that make sense? Because a lot of people put in that question about the resonance in the last test, which isn't wrong, but it's probably more about keeping lower laryngeal position than it is about getting the formants to change where they are. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's us really not a tracking thing, it's more about keeping the larynx lower. Probably. Okay, it depends on the context and what your teacher's saying and blah, 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 you know what I mean?
Would that only necessarily be true of Americans, since is our sort of stock relaxed vowel?
Sure. Maybe, I don't know. I don't have enough experience like working with European singers, you know? Yeah. Josie? What?
Can you talk about what, or is it totally irrelevant to talk about what tracking means and how it applies to your vocal technical study?
Well, tracking was the cover thing that we talked about in registration, right? Do you have a more specific?
Interchangeable words.
Their tracking is moving the formants to follow where the harmonics are.
Oh.
And what kind of sound you want them to be, okay?
Oh.
So if I wanna sing, if you sing a high note, so if you sing, you have to sing E up above the staff or whatever, and you know that it has to sound more like ah, you're probably gonna change your vocal tract position to amplify where your harmonics are.
Okay,
That's vowel tracking. Okay.
okay,
Having the ah idea is probably to keep your larynx a little bit lower.
okay,
But that also might be vowel tracking depending on the context.
okay.
Okay. Because it's changing where the formants go. Does that totally make sense? Okay, awesome. Cool, alright guys. I wanted to, so did you all see that Christina Aguilera thing?
Oh,
Yeah. Like, this is how you say high notes.
the very beginning.
We're gonna talk about it.
Ave Maria.
Okay, let's listen to it. Has anybody not seen it?
I have not seen
I have not seen it.
Okay.
Hey,
I think I'm gonna buy this because I just wanna watch what it is.
Really?
I want,
I mean, really? It's not.
well, okay, we're gonna talk about it.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh, we can't hear you, Christina. Louder.
Well, hang on.
I also love it when people say,
yourself
We'll
out.
start it
You
over.
have it. You.
That's all I wrote on that.
High note battery.
The question I get asked a lot is, how to hit your high notes better, stronger, more impactful. So much really is mental. You kind of have to psych yourself out that you have it, you own it, and you have to just, again, prepare your body for that stance, that confidence that comes from your core, and having the right breath to back it up. During my vocal scales, if you're doing Ave Maria, Ave Maria, Ave Maria, and then I say the next note, Ave Maria, is like the E, the poignant part, say in what you're really trying to hit. If you can try and approach that without thinking like, Ave Maria, like I'm gonna go up there right now. If you can almost think of the note prior to it as being your most important note. So Ave Ma, it's like Ma being the note right before E. If you can almost think of that being like the most troublesome point, and if you nail that, then you're golden. It will take the pressure and the strain off of the impact you're gonna give that super high note that you're worried about.
That's super high notes.
Okay.
I mean, her vocabulary, like her vernacular for singing is like is like not great, I would say, for anybody other than like really advanced singers, but like
Okay, let's talk about this.
my limited high notes.
It's not horrible. So her audience, who's her audience?
Plebs.
The internet.
Plebs.
12-year-old
People singing in their car to the radio is who's gonna buy this, okay? So this is put on by a company, this like masterclass company. They like decided to like talk to all these like famous people about like what they do and to basically give lessons on it. So they have one of like Serena Williams teaching tennis
Oh my god.
and like Kevin Spacey talking about acting. There's
Dustin Hoffman.
Usher is talking about performing.
Usher does.
Yeah. So it's like $90 or something. But I just like want to see what it's not out yet. So hers isn't out yet. The other ones are out. Okay, so that's her audience. So what is she saying that is like applicable to what we're talking about? Yeah, Michael.
Somebody else can go ahead while I choose.
I do believe the part where she said it's not about the high note, it's about the notes before the high note. I completely believe that, yes.
Yeah, that's totally good.
I think one of the things that she's trying to say, or like is hinting at, is that you need to be in the, for lack of a better term, the position that your high note should be in when you start the scale.
Yeah, okay, good. She also talks about everything coming from the core too, right?
Your strength, your confidence.
Good, right. So,
Which I think is undersold in classical vocal ped at times. The sort of mental wherewithal that's necessary to achieve a lot of what we need to do.
and so she sings all of her stuff with microphones and everything, right?
Right.
So she doesn't have to go up there and go like, you know, screaming over an orchestra or something like that. But she still, she sings like that more than a lot of other pop singers do. Especially, like, if you listen to any of her jazz stuff and all that. Okay, I want you to listen to something really interesting about this. When she sings well, they auto-tune it like crazy. And when she sings really bad, they don't do any audio effects on it. Yeah. So listen to like, I just want to show you.
Being like, Ave Maria, like I'm gonna go.
Okay, you see how it like sounds like all dead? And then when she sings, there's like tons of reverb on it. Just listen to
Approach that without thinking like, Ave Maria, like I'm gonna go up there right now. If you can almost think of the note prior to it as being your most important note. So Ave Maria, if like if you can almost think of that being like the most troublesome point, and if you
Okay,
nail
let's
to
go
it
one more
as being
time,
your most
because it's
important
awesome.
note. So Ave Maria, if
They
the
like
being the
edited
note
it.
right before E, if you can
That
almost
had no-
think of
no.
that being like the most troublesome point, and if you nail that. Think of the
Listen,
note
so when she
prior
goes,
to it being
and it's
your
got all
most
the
important
reverb.
note. So Ave Maria, if the ma being
Now there's no
the note
reverb.
right before E, if you can almost
there is.
think of
Not as much as there was.
But she's singing a significantly, that's a
most
significantly
important note.
lower
So
decibel
Ave
note.
Maria, if
That-
the ma
wow.
being the note right before E, you
That
can
very
almost think
quiet.
of
It's
that
not,
being like
they totally edited it.
Wait, go back to the first scale that she's saying.
Yes.
Recording.
Is it, don't have,
Ave
Is it in your recording studio?
Maria,
shit on that
is like
wall.
Go back a little further.
the point. Ave Maria, Ave Maria, Ave Maria, and then it says the next note. Ave Maria, is like the E, the poignant part, say in what you're really
just
trying
won't
to
go.
hit. If you can try and approach that without thinking like, Ave Maria, like I'm.
See, I hear reverb when she talks.
If you can
I think that she's
almost
in a
think of the
big
note
open, I
prior
think
to
she's in an open and live space.
Yeah, she's in a recording studio.
Well, let's blow it up and turn these lights on and see if it's actually.
I only hear the reverb during like this.
I'm not saying.
It's edited.
And it just doesn't come through.
It's totally edited.
Yeah.
The point is, it's effective.
I'm Swiss.
There's somewhere it's affected. And so if you're gonna try to sound like Christina Aguilera from listening to these recordings, you're not going to, right?
Well, some of us learned that at age 12, but
Right.
because it's taken us to be
Try our
longer.
best.
Joke, I'm breaking my
Alright.
heart. We really tried.
I just thought that would be interesting to listen to. Okay,
That is so real. That's such a real reference.
let's talk about
Okay, so hearing.
Got some confidence on we need a bottle behind Candyman. We were like,
what time are we at?
not gonna happen for me.
Okay, so we have a quiz on
It's too late.
Thursday, and then the health presentations are next week, yeah?
Yeah.
And is this gonna be like quiz like last time or quiz like the Great American Novel?
It's the format is like the Great American Novel, but it's not as long.
Okay.
So like 9 pages so far.
It's like 5. But I gave you lots of space to write everything.
Oh,
right?
perfect,
Yeah,
okay,
okay.
okay. good.
Yeah, love it.
Oh boy.
I just wanted to know if I needed to bring a change of clothes.
If you're wearing that suit, you probably do.
Hey,
Alright,
don't let it bring you
so
down.
here's the hearing part. Okay, so some of this stuff I like looked up outside of the Scott McCoy book, so this isn't all the same stuff in there. His chapter's like 3 pages long and he doesn't say anything. It's so weird. Okay. So hearing, there's 3 parts to your outer, there's the outer ear, middle ear, and the inner ear.
Is this also for the quiz?
This is for the quiz. And the question that there's like 2 questions on this on the quiz. Most of it is from the articulation stuff. And what I'm gonna do is ask you about like how your ear hears sound through each of the different sections, okay? So basically the question is like, explain what happens in the outer ear, middle ear, inner ear. Use these terms to talk about what happens, okay?
Okay.
Awesome. So the auricle is the pinna, this part out here that we all see, right? The ear canal is this part, okay? So do you guys remember the resonance equation, or the wavelength equation? The gamma equals speed of sound over 4L. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So this one, this is a quarter wave resonator too, right? Because it's closed at one end and open at the other one. Okay. So could somebody take their calculator? So if it's 0.25 millimeters long, that's 0.0025 meters, right?
If it was 0.25 meters long.
2 zeros.
Yes.
2.5 millimeters. 0.0025 meters.
Yes.
Okay. So then our wavelength will be 340, right? Divided by 4 times 0.0025. Can you do that on the calculator?
So 340 divided by. Oh, not on my basic little iPhone calculator. It's not doing that.
You get more buttons if you turn.
0.0025 times 4.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's 3. What was the sum?
340 divided
340.
by.
340 divided by 0.09 is 34,000.
Right, which is what? 3,400, right? Hertz? 1,000, yeah. That's right around where your singer's formant is, right?
Well, 0.0025
It should be 3,400.
divided by 4 times.
Why times 4?
You can't math.
The point is,
Divide.
okay, so the length of our tube in our ear is equal to where our singer's formant goes. That's why people can hear singers with the singer's formant better, because it actually amplifies part of your voice.
The human body is amazing.
It's crazy, right? And that's also how we hear babies when it's so loud, right? Okay, so, because our ear will actually amplify part of it. Okay, so the tympanic membrane, that's the part right here, that's like where your eardrum is, right? So if you ever puncture that, things happen badly to you, right?
How far in is your eardrum?
2.5.
2.5 millimeters. That is what.
Very close.
That's when
That is
that's when you
really
put your
close.
Q-tip in.
Well, I know, but like a Q-tip is like, I don't know, 2 inches.
You don't stick the whole thing in there, do you?
No, but like.
Awesome. So our middle ear is this part in here, okay guys? You see in this, so out here's the outer ear, you see how it's shaded?
So the canal is part of the outer ear.
Yep,
Okay.
because it's still like part with the air outside, right? So then there's the tympanic membrane, and then this is sealed off, except for the auditory tube that goes in here, okay? So we get the, it's filled with air, there's 3 different bones, okay? The malleus, incus, and stapes. These guys. And so basically those like hit against each other and vibrate, and that's how we turn the sounds into physical vibrations that hit our nerves that make us hear, okay?
Do they touch the tympanic membrane thing, or do they, is it just the stuff that goes through?
Right, so this is the malleus one, right here.
Okay.
So that's the hammer, and then the anvil gets hit, the incus, and then the stapes.
They still good school supplies.
Staples. That's good. So, so then there's also muscles that are in here, and so if like a sound is too loud, we use our tensor tympanum to kind of deaden our eardrum, so that it doesn't vibrate as hard. So we kind of have like we can turn the volume down on our ear, and the stapedius does the same thing. They are like right here. So they're connected to those bones. And those are like they're bones, they're like the smallest bones in your body, right? You guys heard about that?
Yeah.
Like the bones in your ear. It's those 3. They're like the size of a grain of sand.
At least they have each other.
Yeah, totally. Alright, good. So then there's the auditory tubes that we talked about. we go to the nasopharynx. Remember, those help like balance the air pressure in between the two, because if it's different, everything like sounds dead, right? If you have like your ears plugged and you can't hear anything, that's why, because you can't actually release your auditory tube to balance with the atmosphere. Cool? Awesome. Alright, so the inner ear is this thing, okay? So we get the vibrations of the sound come from the bones right here that connected to this, and it's filled with fluid, basically that like triggers hairs that make us sense what frequency it's vibrating at.
Can you repeat that? Triggers hair?
Like cilia, right? Those are like little hairs, and they're like set for whatever frequency. And so if like this hair is vibrating, our brain knows from that nerve pulse that we're hearing that frequency. Okay? And so the way that you actually lose, there's two different ways to lose hearing, but part of it can be if those like cilia get broken or paralyzed, you don't hear those frequencies anymore.
And so you could have a selective problem where your cilia only are insensitive at certain frequencies, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That would be interesting.
Okay, but this part is about the balance, okay? So over here, we've got the organs, the utricle, the sagittule, and the semicircular canals and ducts, okay? So the utricle is right here, and this senses like the fluid moving in these tubes helps you understand where your balance is, okay? And you have one in each of your ears, and that's how you can tell. So the utricle helps you sense it on a horizontal plane, like where I'm tilting horizontally, and the saccule helps you feel it on the vertical, okay? And then with the canals and ducts, there's these three. So there's this one, and there's this one. And the way that the fluid flows through those and hits those other organs helps you balance, okay? Awesome. So the cochlea is the spin thing inside of your ear. It's like the snail cell shape. And you don't need to know like all of this stuff, but we'll go through it, okay? You just need to know what the cochlea is, okay? It's covered with little hairs inside of here, and the vestibule is the fluid-filled tube inside the curve, so it's like in here, and the skeleton penny is outside the curve, so it's on the other side, okay? And they're filled with the different types of fluids so that they have different viscosities for the different vibrations, okay? So it's basically like a redundant system.
Yeah.
So that if something's like messed up, the other one will still work. So because hearing is so important, like our communication and everything, okay? Yeah, this is basically like interesting stuff.
This sort of stuff will not be on the.
No, you have to know what the cochlea is, right? This will be pretty easy to explain. Okay.
So we'll need to be able to label as well as describe?
I'll tell you in a second. Yeah, don't worry about what's on the test. We'll do the review.
Oh, great.
Okay, and the basilar membrane is like this like bony structure that runs through here that the hairs are attached to. Okay. Great. So the width and the hardness of the basilar membrane is what determines what frequencies are heard through it, because it goes through the solids, right? So when we hit the bones over here, knocking, 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 and then it goes through the solids to vibrate the hairs so that we feel, okay? So how big this is determines what frequencies will vibrate along that part of the basilar membrane, okay? So it starts thicker and it gets thinner down here. And when it's thinner, it vibrates at a higher frequency, yeah? Okay. Right. Okay, so hearing yourself sing, this is a conceptual thing. Through the air, we can hear ourselves like at our resonance and everything. Higher frequencies travel straighter than the bassier ones, so higher frequencies go out, and so we hear more generally bassier versions of ourselves because bass goes around.
So is that why when you have annoying neighbors that live beneath you and they play music, you can hear,
You only hear the bass.
Not our situation.
We live above.
We are those
You are
annoying neighbors. Yeah.
Well, so bass frequencies have more power over longer range too, you know.
Oh, okay.
And so there's all kinds of things that happen with that. But you know how like if you have a subwoofer, you can put it anywhere in the room and it still sounds like it's coming from your TV or your speaker system?
Yeah.
That's mostly the reason for all
Okay.
that stuff.
Cool.
And then, good. So you ever see people when they sing like this?
Yeah.
They're doing it because of this.
You know.
When you put your palm towards your mouth and your fingers towards your ears, you're redirecting the higher frequencies to your ear. If I do this, because when I sing, my high frequencies go straight out. But when I go like this, I hear the higher frequencies back this way.
Or you're just trying to block out the tone deaf guy in your life.
I mean,
Yeah, that might
do you
happen too.
hear everything more? But the point is to amplify the higher frequencies because they're what escape fastest.
So through your ear,
Right.
you don't hear the higher frequencies as much through the air.
Right.
Okay?
But you
because they go
already
straight.
hear the other stuff. So when you do this, everything actually is coming back to you, but what you notice is the increased
The
higher
high frequencies,
Okay.
yeah. Because you're hearing the bassier part. Yeah.
Right.
Yep,
Thank you.
totally. Okay, the dominant way we actually hear ourselves is through our body, the vibrations going through our actual skull and everything, right? Because sound travels faster through solids, and so it actually like changes the way we resonate and everything. So that's why when people tell you you have to sing by feeling and not by the way you hear yourself, because you can't really hear yourself. Okay? You don't get an accurate picture of what you sound like. You know, I tell you, whenever I listen to recordings of myself, I'm like, man, I'm not a dark singer. I don't sound dark. And then I listen to a recording and I sound like, whoa. And I'm like, I did not feel that way. You know, it just has to do with this, the way everything messes around. Okay. Awesome. So then, hearing loss. There's two different kinds. Conductive hearing loss is mechanical problems with the inner and outer ear. Usually something's like plugged up, like you have an ear infection, or there's hindrances to the vibration of your cilia, something like that, right? Okay. Then sensory neural hearing loss is problems with the actual nerves. And so that comes from broken cilia and smashed unresponsive, if there's like problems with the fluid inside your ear, something like that. That, you don't usually fix that, right? Because they can do things like have like cochlear implants and things that they have, which we could ask Eric Kowalski when he comes. He'll probably know something about that. But I don't know what his real focus is, but we'll find out, I'm sure. Okay, so that's kind of what that happens. Remember that distance is inversely proportional to loudness, so the closer something is, the louder it'll be, right?
Yes.
So it's directly, sorry, I wrote the wrong word. So when you have earbuds in your ear, remember that they're way closer to your eardrums than you even think that they are. And so they're like twice as loud.
No, you did the right word. Because as the distance gets greater, the sound gets smaller.
Yeah, so I was right.
Yeah.
Great.
Nailed it.
What happens when your ear like rings?
That's called tinnitus.
That's when you lose a little bit of hearing, right? That's the indicator of that.
So that's like when your nerves keep firing, because something happened with like the cilia. So remember that like you get the nerve impulse because the cilia is vibrating, or like triggers the nerve to fire. And so usually if something like too loud happened and you get tinnitus, the hair is like stuck on.
What about like buzzing at certain frequencies?
What do you mean?
That means you're broken.
Like,
No, I took
You
like
seem to
a.
be tightened up a little.
what do you mean?
So like I should just get like a wrench and then
Yeah.
I don't know. There was another. I don't remember what kind of hearing loss it is. I took a class that was an undergrad. I'll look it up. I'll figure it out.
Okay,
Good chat.
Good talk, everyone.
good job.
Thank you.
I think, okay, that's the end of here.
My
But
hearing aids work.
hearing aids take frequencies and they amplify them.
Oh, that's it.
Yeah.
It's not as exciting.
I mean, they have different kinds. And they're like super expensive because they're like really sensitive to, and they're tiny, right? Yeah. Okay, so what you have to explain on the test is how hearing works. So your ear, like it comes through the outer ear, it goes through the quarter wave resonator, that's your tube, right? And then you hear it through the your eardrum, it hits the little bones, knock against each other, then they play to the cochlear implant, or the cochlea, and then that's how you hear it through the cilia. Okay? That's what's important about hearing. You also have things that help you balance in there. There's the two, or not balance, right? Because if they're screwed up, you'll feel like you're off balance. And then there's the tubes that help connect the air pressure and all that, right? Eustachian tubes. We all clear about that?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So, What I wanted to do for the rest of the class was do review. Yeah. There. So did you guys have any questions about anything you want to talk about first? I put review packets, like all the outlines that I did before, on the Google Drive, so you can look at those if you want.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah,
Okay.
Like the best of this stuff,
yeah, that's how I figured you guys.
Dove, senior bench?
They're in the folders for articulation and hearing.
Oh, great. Oh, amazing!
I have a question.
Yeah.
Under stylopharyngeus, you have only muscle that opens the throat.
Yep.
I thought that there were no muscles that actually like.
It opens your esophagus.
Uh,
It's the one that technically opens part of your throat.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So it is like tiny. It doesn't like open your throat. It opens your esophagus, which is part of your throat, which is usually closed, right? Because we're breathing most of the time.
Right.
And then when we're swallowing, it goes.
Okay.
That's why when we swallow, we feel the like distension.
It doesn't have anything to do with the part of the throat that singing happens in.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
But they have to say it because they have to be super technical about everything, right? My like stuff. Anybody else have some questions? We got a whole 30 minutes.
Nasalis,
Mm-hmm.
the transverse nasalis, it pulls our nostrils upward or downward. I know the, how do you pronounce that,
Alari Nakwe.
does it downward,
Mm-hmm.
but I have in my previous notes that the transverse pulls them downward, but here it says upward, so I just want to make sure.
The transverse is the one that goes across, right?
Yeah, side of the nose,
So it's the one that's going to do this.
so it goes up.
Yeah.
So for the quiz, we're identifying facial muscles.
Uh-huh.
We're doing a couple of questions on hearing. We're doing
Tongue muscles.
tongue
So
muscles.
it's articulation, right?
So we have to
Right.
label all these muscles as well,
Right.
as say what they do.
It's the same as that other one, right? So I'll give you a picture, and I'll say, here's number one. Identify this. Tell me what it does. Okay. And it's the facial muscles, the articulation muscles, and the tongue muscles. Yeah. So it's things like the soft palate, hard palate, the different parts of the tongue. There's 4 different parts of the tongue, right? Do you guys remember what they are?
The dorsum,
That's the tongue, but there's 4 different parts of muscles in the tongue. In the dorsum.
Superior longitudinal. Inferior longitudinal.
Yep, that's 2 of them.
Vertical
Mm-hmm.
and horizontal.
Yep.
Oh, those are logical.
But you also have to know what they do, right?
Oh, yes.
So superior longitudinal is superior, right? So that means it's
On top.
Hi.
on top. And so when you flex it, what would it do?
Short.
Yep,
Goes
Really?
and then goes whoop.
yep. Inferior one goes out, right?
Wait, how does the inferior one, when it contracts, make it longer? Oh, it curls it down.
You're like on
Because it
top,
curls it down and
then
forward.
it pulls it back, like whoop, and bottom whoop.
Because that one gets shorter. Yep, okay, good. So then the vertical one that goes up and down in the tongue,
Would, when it flexes, would make the tongue flatter.
you'd think, but it doesn't. It actually makes it stiffer. So it's one of those like the transverse abdominals where it really doesn't like move, it just like gets harder.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. You'd think that it'd make it go down, but that's actually part of your hypoglossus, right? It gets really complicated. Good. And then the horizontal one makes it go like this, right?
Well, it says it flattens the dorsum and causes it to curl, and I feel like those are 2 opposite actions,
Well, the curl like this.
and that's flattening.
Mhm.
Okay.
Did you say the inferior ultimately
lengthens it, is that what you were just saying?
The inferior one sticks your tongue out.
Okay. But it shortens the underside?
Mhm.
That's,
Let's see.
okay,
So it curls it like this.
okay. So almost like shortens the underside and lengthens the side, kind of?
Yeah.
I'm just trying to like.
Yeah,
get it
right.
into my-
So if you, okay, if you think of the superior one, if you flex it, it's gonna
Yeah.
make it do this.
Right, that makes sense.
Right? The inferior one is gonna make it do this,
Right,
okay?
okay.
And if you do both of them together,
Then it's just really tense and.
it goes like this,
Oh.
Yeah.
That's what I was gonna say.
cause it's attached around like here-ish, right? Not down here, so it's not doing this.
Yeah.
It just
Okay.
is this. Okay,
Cool, thank
the
you.
vertical one stiffens it, horizontal one spreads it out. Okay? And you can use all those in different combinations. That's why our tongue is so hard to use, because we can use it in so many different ways. Yeah? Cool? Awesome. So then we had the extrinsic glossus muscles, like the palatal-glossus, styloglossus, hyoglossus, and genioglossus. Right? Most of those we actually already knew from the other chapters when we were talking about the higher bones, like the laryngeal elevators. I already forgot it, but I'll just have to review it. Right. So I didn't spend a lot of time on them in class, because I figured we already talked about them. Yeah? Okay. And then we had the physical parts of the pharynx and palate, like our alveolar ridge, hard palate, soft palate, uvula, fossal pillars, all those stuff. Tonsils, which some people don't have, or will soon be losing. Alright, great, then we have the constrictors, we talked about those before, and the, like, palatopharynges, stylopharynges, subpingopharynges. Okay, remember to look at the pictures for these, because they're picture identification and then knowing which one it is, what it does. And I put the word bank in there, just like last time too. Okay. So we had levator veli palatini and tensor veli palatini, that's like raise the soft palate and tense the soft palate, yeah. Cool. Then we have the ones of the jaw, it's like masseter, internal pterygoid, temporalis, and then the jaw depression like the digastric and mylohyoid, which we learned all of those already before. Platysma, lateral pterygoid. And subluxation, do you guys remember what subluxation is?
Opening the jaw.
So it pops out of those, the like the.
So it has to do with a specific joint, right?
Can you say the word again?
Subluxation.
It's when that little thing that goes in between the joint and the jaw pops out of place because we're making the two.
It's when your jaw comes out of the TMJ joint.
Which means that your disc is no longer in the TMJ, it's the shit next to it.
It's not, subluxation is just when your jaw comes out of it.
Okay.
Oh, it's just when it pops out of that initial
Mhm.
3 millimeters.
When the disc comes out, that's what TMJ like dysfunction is.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
So you can do that without,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, like our body's designed to do that.
Mhm.
We do, it's like the snake thing where we eat things that are bigger than our heads, right? Because that's what snakes do when they open their mouths and eat like a mouse. They totally like sublux their jawbone out of there, like that.
Interesting.
Yeah, but that's what subluxation is. But that's really bad for you when you sing, right? Because it makes your high one move. Because it takes all those muscles that are attached to your chin and pulls them all up. Okay, great. So then we had all the facial ones. Epicranius is the one up here.
Buchinator.
The buccinator.
Anybody gets that wrong?
I looked that up. So buccinator is because buccinate means blow up, right? It's because buccinator means like blow, and it's the muscle you use to blow. Right.
Interesting.
Oh, learn things new.
Buccinate. Buccinate?
Yeah,
Mhm.
means blow. If you're thinking dirty tummy, it's other words than that in Italian. Okay. So we had all like the depressor labii, levator labii, spinosaurus, right? That was all the articulation muscles. Cool.
Nailed it.
if there are any questions, we can talk about more of it, but I don't see a reason to make you stay in summer.
It's pretty
Straightforward.
Yeah.
Yeah, not a lot of crazy stuff. Are we still waters?
Y'all done? If you have any questions, just ask me.
And you said there will not be any labeling on the hearing part?
No, it's just the explanation.
Who's anonymous chipmunk?
Could be me. No, my name.
No, you're not a person.
I feel like something's happening behind my back, so okay.
No,
Ron.
I'm looking at the Google Doc and it tells you like what users are on it, and one of the users' name is anonymous chipmunk.
How do you see who's on it?
It's at the top of the document.
Google just does that. Yeah, Google just names it.
Current viewers.
Yeah.
Mine doesn't say that.
Are you?
Am I the anonymous chipmunk?
You might be.
Could be.
Oh my
I'm
god.
I'm gonna see.
Are you anonymous
Chris.
too?
I don't know, that's Chris Bett.
Oh, somebody's an anonymous platypus and somebody's an anonymous chipmunk.
Oh my gosh.
Well, I'm on the Google Doc too, so it's fine.
So you're the platypus and I'm
Oh
the
my
anonymous
god. Okay
chipmunk.
guys,
I'm the platypus.
everybody leave.
Thank you guys.
Yeah. If you have any questions, I'm gonna stay here, then you can ask.
Yep.
Yeah.
I have to stay first, right?